relaxed and content dog, his tail is just neither high nor low. It's sort of just in a nothing kind of a position relative to his breed. And if the dog is insecure and fearful, the tail is going to be tucked under. So here we have the classic example of a terrified dog with his tail tucked and running like hell. And this is a dominant parade from a dog. The dog's tail is held horizontal or higher. And he's basically saying, you know, you elected me and you're going to have to be stuck with me because I'm boss. Kind of a thing. Now, everything has to be modified on the basis of the fact that, you know, right here in Canada, the CKC recognizes over 160 different dog breeds. And some carry their tails high, like a beagle over here. And some carry their tails quite low, like some of the sight hounds. This is a greyhound. This greyhound over here. The dog's name is Shayna, actually. But what we're talking about is sort of, you know, the typical dog which tends to hold his tail in a mid-range, and everything else is sort of judged relative to that. I mean, this guy's tail will go down if he gets upset, and that sort of thing. Sometimes the tail has different messages other than just dominance. So in this particular case, you get this a lot in females, which is called flagging, where the tail goes way up in the air, looks very cat-like in its way. And she holds it virtually vertical, and she turns away from the dog and looks back over her shoulder. It's sort of, hi, sailor, you want to buy me a drink? Kind of a thing. I mean, of course, dogs are more demure than that, right? If we look at increasing dominance and aggression, here we've got a very relaxed dog. And as the dog becomes more aggressive, first of all, he's going to start to lean forward on his front legs. His tail is going to start to rise. His body's going to stiffen. His mouth is going to close. And as he gets more and more aroused, that tail is going to go up. The fur is going to get bushier and so forth. If the dog is getting very fearful, he's going to start to lower his body. So the weight is actually going back at this point. The tail is going down, and eventually he's going to lower his whole body in this instance. And basically what's going on over here is very simple. You know, when the dog is being fearful, he's basically trying to look smaller so that he's less of a threat. Look at me, I'm just a little puppy, don't hurt me, kind of a thing. And you can clearly see this in a whole lot of other animals. It's very similar in cats. So here we've got increasing aggression. So just pick one of the lines and you can see that the cat is making himself look larger and is putting more of a lean forward on his body. And as the animal becomes more fearful, you can see that he starts to cringe down, making himself smaller and smaller. Now, obviously, you're going to get some strange combinations. You know, he's becoming more increasingly aggressive. I'm going to go after you if you hurt me, while trying to look smaller. And eventually you get to some bizarre postures like the typical frightened Halloween cat kind of thing. So when a dog is very frightened or insecure, I mean, they cringe. They go down into that sort of puppy-like status. Here we've got a relaxed dog. His ears are up. They're neither forward nor back. His head is high. That's that relaxed tail. And his mouth is slightly open with his tongue exposed. Keep that in your mind for a half a second. So there we've got a relaxed and confident dog. There's another one. And there's another one. Now, the important thing over here is look at that mouth and notice that the tongue is out over the front teeth. And that is the closest that we have to a smile in dogs. And that this is not a new scientific finding. We being scientists, academics, and that sort of thing, have found toys from the 18th dynasty and later in Egypt which look very much like some of our classic toys today for kids. They're sort of a little animal on a platform with wheels designed to have a string, so you sort of drag it along. And they have, some of them have a dog with his tongue, this huge tongue coming out like this. And don't ask me the Egyptian word for it, because I don't remember. But basically it translates to the smiling dog toy. So they were recognizing that at that point in time. So in human beings, of course, that is our smile. But in dogs, that is their basic smile. Now, humans can use smiles for a whole variety of different expressions. So, for example, we have masked anger. Oh, of course, I'm not upset with you, dear, kind of a thing. Or forced and insincere politeness. Oh, yes, you're welcome anytime you want to come here. And an attempt to soften criticism. Well, I'm not trying to be harsh now. And reluctant compliance, which is sort of like, oh, if you insist, kind of things. For dogs, smiles are just smiles. I mean, there are no nuances, okay? It comes in one flavor, black or white, right? Now, when the dog becomes alert and attentive, that mouth is going to close, so that sort of relaxed smile is gone. The eyes are going to open up a bit. The dog is going to lean forward a little bit. Sometimes you get a slight rise or a bristle in the tail. That's a classic example of a very beautiful golden retriever, relaxed and attentive. That's a Norrbotspet. So these are classic examples of relaxed, attentive dogs. Now, aggressive signals in dogs don't always mean that the dog is trying to assert dominance. And there are two major types of aggressive signals. And how you respond depends on the type. Now, this is really very important. I mean, I gave a series of talks to the post office because these people were all panicked about dogs, and pointed out to them that one of the really bad things which happens is when people become worried or fearful or that sort of thing, their brain closes down. And they don't really start processing information well. But of course it's the case if a dog is growling at you, somehow or another to look at the nuances of, let's see what he's doing with his eyes and his ears and the shape of his mouth. But the important things here are, this is a very dominant dog making an aggressive threat, so his ears are going to go forward, he's leaning forward, and you begin to see the wrinkles on the nose, and the body stance is very high. As the dog becomes more excited, you begin to get a raising of the hair on the shoulders and the hips. Those are called the hackles, and that's a sign of excitement, arousal more than anything else. So the body movements emphasize the dominance, and the face tells us sort of the degree of threat which we're dealing with. The very first thing which you have to worry about are the eyes. I mean, the uniform expression of dominance is to actually stare with wide eyes at somebody else. And if you've got a stiff, upright stance and that wide-eyed stare, this is a dog who is making a quite clear, this is my neighborhood, vacate it, please, response. That's a pretty hard, clear statement. That dominant stare, by the way, is the main tool which a border collie uses along with a set of other threats. I mean, they have what is called a hard eye, and they'll come and they'll stare at the sheep, and the sheep will say, oh, hell, I don't need that. I'll move in that direction. If the animals don't move, the border collie, carries through the threat. I mean, he'll make a direct charge toward the herd, and if that doesn't work, he'll even nip. So, I mean, they're very bright dogs, but don't expect them to be sort of very tolerant in this sort of thing. If the mouth opens wider, it means that the dog is starting to show his weapons. And the wider the mouth opens, the more of a threat you're getting. Now, in this particular case, we're looking at a dominance threat. And you can see, first of all, that the dog begins to develop wrinkles right across the top of the snout. And that usually is the first sign that the dog is going to at least contemplating a snap or a bite. But notice the shape of this mouth, and that's really important. That's a wide open C-shaped mouth, and that is the classic expression of a dominance threat. This is a guy who is basically saying, I am the boss around here, why are you challenging me, kind of a thing. And here are sort of typical dominance threats from these dogs. You can see their mouth is open very wide. You can see the teeth, but you can't see very much of the gums. And at the same time, the eyes are quite wide open. The dogs are making that staring motion at you. Now, the ears usually stay up until a moment before the dog actually attacks. When those ears flip downward somewhat, you know that that bite is coming. That's sort of a protective response. And these are sort of universal across canines. So these are the wide-eyed stare. This is a wolf, a little timber wolf. He's an open mouth threat. The ears are up and forward. And he's got that stiff stance with the raised hackles. And you do start to get the tail tend to bush out. And in German Shepherd type dogs, actually, they'll develop a little kink in the tail, which is part of their whole dominance display. Now, dogs often stare at people in order to control our behavior. Okay, you've all seen this, right? Okay. And humans interpret this as begging, okay? And, you know, we go, oh, yeah, all right, here's a cookie, right? And as soon as you do that, the dog, in fact, knows that, in fact, he's won the dominance game and he's a higher rank than you are. So you got to be careful about these sorts of things. For fear-based aggression, the dog starts to be lower himself. Remember, he's more frightened. The hackles are up and so forth. But the eyes are going to be a slightly different shape. They're going to be more tear-shaped. And you're going to see more of the gums in over here. It's almost as though you are pulling the corners of the mouth back, so it's no longer C-shaped. It's sort of an elongated shape. So this is a fear-aggressive dog. Dogs are cursorial animals, which means swift running. And their goal in life is to stay sound and stay, you know, out of trouble. And given their druthers, they would prefer to run rather than to engage in a fight. Any lowering of the body is going to be your mark that the dog has some fear, some insecurities involved in this sort of thing. So you can see this is a pretty impressive looking threat if you don't know what you're looking for. But it's an elongated mouth and the back of the body is lowered. So we're looking at fear motivation. And what you're looking for specifically are the ears down. Is the weight off of the front feet? Is it back like this in some way or another? And you have to watch that face. Here we've got two dogs which are showing fear-based aggression. The important thing to note is those ears are down. They're not up and forward as they are in that dominant dog. The mouth seems to be pulled back. You can see, so it's sort of an elongated. And in this particular case, you can see that the eyes are beginning to show that sort of almond-shaped thing as though you're pulling them back at the outside canthus. So they sort of develop these sort of teardrop shape. And very often, if the dog is highly aroused and very afraid, you'll see the gums on this. So this is quite a fearful growl. So I know you're all saying to yourself, if that thing is growling at me, he's saying, oh, look at the dog's mouth shape and look at the... If you're not moving, okay, and you are standing stock still, you got plenty of time to assess that, okay? Because the dog is not going to respond if you don't move, all right? That's one of the bottom lines in this thing. Anyway, so the trick over here is to look at the mouth and the ears. So here's increasing fearfulness. Notice the mouth is going to start to get elongated slightly, and the ears are going to go down. And here's the mouth, and as you get more and more likely aggression, you get the mouth opened wider and wider. If a dog is already down and somebody comes over and threatens him, the dog is much more likely to give a sort of little threat growl, but not stand up or do anything like that, because changing his posture can be looked at as sort of expressing dominance. So let's ask the question. I mean, here we've got the two dogs. This is your dominant aggressive, and that is your fearful aggressive dog. And you can tell by the eyes, the mouth, the ears. Which is the greater threat? Well, the trick is a dominant dog is saying, back off, give me space, I'm boss around here. If you back off and give him space, he says, told you. Okay? End of story. End of situation. However, if you've got a fearful dog, that dog may be totally swamped by emotion. He might, in fact, be dealing with a situation where he's in fear of his life, and he might take it, if you start to move away quickly, as his opportunity to use the old, the best defense is a good offense kind of a response. So this guy worries me a hell of a lot more than that guy does. This guy I can negotiate with. Okay, this guy I have to think about each thing which I do. If a dog has been in an aggressive state for a long period of time, you'll start to see foam. That is not rabies. Okay? Yeah. So don't. Rabies is not a real problem. But if you see a dog who is showing this, he's showing fear, aggression with all this foam. I mean, this is a dog that I am not going to approach until he calms down. If the dog is being stressed, what we find is you're going to have the eyes are going to be slightly hooded. You'll see dilated pupils because they really are aroused. The dog is going to start to pant. His ears are going to be back. He's going to lower his body and his tails, and he might start to sweat through his paws. In addition to sort of this lowered body, though, we see something which I call sort of the crescent moon stance. The dog lowers his body, his tail is down, his eyes are squinted, okay, and the ears are low. I mean, this is all the pattern which I've been talking about. But they curve their body, okay, so that their rear as well as their front portion is more curved toward the threat. And that's a good sign of stress and anxiety. If you wonder why this is the case, this is because it takes one movement to flip, and now his rear and his front are in alignment, and he's pointed away so he can run. Remember, these guys prefer to run. As the dog becomes more stressed, his internal temperature begins to rise. And so you start to get a whole bunch of other stress-related symptoms. So you get rapid, shallow breathing. The dog will start to pant. Sometimes you'll get some drooling with him. And you'll see wet droplets of saliva. And the dogs don't sweat through their skin the way that we do. The only way a dog can cool himself off when he's overheated is by panting, or he sweats through the paws. And so you'll sometimes see sort of wet paw prints. In the first day of dog obedience class, the beginner's dog obedience class, it looks like every dog has come in from the rain because there's all these sort of wet little paw prints around. Another sign of stress is this paw lift, and that's really quite typical, and it basically is a sign of insecurity. And you sometimes get yawning, so you sometimes get the paw lift and yawning, and that yawn is again a sign of stress in the dog. Here we're getting a dog who's more and more fearful. So this is a fearful dog who's being very, very submissive. He's not a threat to anybody. But his ears are back, but his forehead and his muzzle are going to be very smooth. No wrinkles in that. The mouth is usually closed, but sometimes the dog will lick at the air or lick at the face of the dog who's threatening him, or the person. And again, here we can see the beginning of that paw lift. The degree of submissiveness is determined by just how the dog's body posture is. So the rump being lower than the shoulders is a clear submissive signal. So you can see that this guy is much more worried than this one is, who has his tail out. And this guy is a lot more worried than the other dog. Now, you can get a reverse of this, which is with the head being lower than the rear. That's also submissive, but it's somewhat less so. So you start to get this, the head is held lower than the head of the other animal. But it's not, you're terrifying me kind of submission. If a dog is already in the lower position, he usually remains so if another dog comes over, because to break that position is often viewed as a challenge. And if you get a seated dog, you'll sometimes see them, if they're worried, they go into that little slump. Just think of that as sort of the seated version of lowering the body that we saw when they were standing. Dogs will respond to just about anything which they think is alive with the same signal. So this dog has been slightly frightened by this goat, so he goes into the typical posture. Look at me, I'm just a little puppy, don't hurt me, kind of a thing. The dog who's of lower status, the one who is sort of recognizing the other guy as boss, will very often lick at the face of the higher status animal. And we tend to tell our kids, well, a dog licking your face, that's a dog's kisses. But are they kisses? In the wild, you got to remember, I'm a mommy dog, or mommy wolf in this case, and I have to bring some food back to the den. The thing is that I don't have any shopping bags or shopping carts to bring them back, so what I do is I just gorge myself with the food, and I come back, and what happens is the pups lick at my face, and I barf it out on the ground. And so the puppies then get nice, warm, partially digested food, and all is well. So licking the face for young dogs is really food solicitation. And you see it all the time. I mean, older dogs put up with it. If the dog's old enough, they don't do any barfing for them. But what's happened over evolutionary time is that this licking has now become a sort of a social ritual. So if a young dog comes and goes like that, the other dog's apt to bend over and sort of lick his head or his ears, sort of acknowledging the situation. And if the fearful dog, or the one who's very submissive, can't get to the other dog, he'll sometimes lick the air in front of him, so like that kind of thing. So what is this dog saying, right? I love you, could be. I respect you as if you were my mother, I'm just like a little puppy, I know you'll take care of me. Most likely it's, how about a little snack? If dogs' licks are kisses, then dogs seem to love just about everybody. They lick just about everybody. It's really quite indiscriminate. If you get two confident dogs together, what you get is this sort of sniffing, which occurs at first. You can see these guys, neither of them is backing down, no body posture indicating any submission. And then it sort of turns into this mutual butt sniffing kind of a thing. Generally speaking in dogs, it's dominant dogs that sniff the butt of the non-dominant dogs. But in this case, they're equally dominant. Probably the most extreme fear which you can get is where the dog rolls over. You might get a sprinkle of urine. The dog averts his eyes. He exposes his belly. His tail is tucked in like that. This is a dog, don't kill me, please don't kill me, kind of a response. And it's, any sort of a threat can cause this. And very often with puppies, they do it a lot because they're threatened by just about everything, which sort of towers over them. So they're always sort of rolling on the ground and showing their belly. The Nobel Prize-winning ethologist Konrad Lorenz was one of the people who looked at social signals in dogs. And he was one of the people who noticed that, non-dominant, submissive, frightened dogs will tend to roll on their back. And then he suggested something, which is that if humans could possibly use this to express the fact that they are dominant. Now, I loved Konrad Lorenz's work, and the books which he wrote for general audiences like King Solomon's Ring and Man Meets Dog and that sort of thing are wonderful things even today to read, but he was wrong. Okay, that's the bottom line here. You'll see some people, people like Cesar Millan on television who calls himself the dog whisperer, and some other people teaching what's called the alpha roll, where if you've got, to express your dominance over the dog, you roll him on his back. You stand over him, making eye contact with a dominant stare, and sometimes they say to growl at the dog. It's based on an erroneous reading of the situation. If I walk over to this beautiful lady over here and I put a gun to her head and I say, "Tell me you love me," okay? What's she going to say? "I love you." Okay? Does she love me? No. Okay? It's just that, she has been forced into that expression, into that particular linguistic expression. And that's the problem with this. The problem with this is you are basically forcing the dog into that position, but he doesn't believe it. Yeah, you got him on his back this time. And furthermore, you're making a whole bunch of mistakes. First of all, you are saying that physical violence is allowable in this relationship. So that means if you can physically force this dog into a position, then the dog can respond with physical violence. And he's going to respond first to your kids because, he's more apt to win that particular fight. And sometimes it's just plain dangerous. Cesar Millan has this show on the National Geographic Channel in the States. And the first time that I saw it, I was absolutely astonished because it opens up with, "Do not try this at home." Excuse me, right? Why the hell are you giving advice to people as to what they should do with their dogs? And then you put this thing, "Do not." The reason is you try this with a big enough dog or an aggressive dog, you're going to get your face chewed off. There's a gal on one of our Gulf islands. I will not identify the island because it only has one dog trainer there. We were called in as part of one of my shows to this woman. She was 105 pounds maybe, wearing heavy, wet clothing, and stood about this high. And she had two of the biggest Rottweilers I have ever seen in my entire life. The girl was a petite 130 pounds, and the boy was close to 15 pounds bigger than that, and he was black as coal. He looked like he was Satan's dog over there. And this stupid dog trainer was saying, "Roll them on their back and give the alpha roll." Well, excuse me. That Rottweiler has a bite strength of something like about 600 pounds per square inch. All right? That's enough to crush your bones. And you're going to have this little slip of a woman try to roll these dogs over in order to express her dominance? It's not the way it works. I taught her that you hold a little piece of kibble, and then you have dominated the dog, okay? One of my favorite positions is this one. This is the so-called play bow. The ears are up, the mouth is open. Notice there's our smile again in this situation. The front paws are bent down over there, and it's usually accompanied by a sound. These are dogs of different ages, all doing the same kind of play bow. And here's the play bark. It's sort of a haruff. Okay. I love giving that one. That is a playbow. That was a playbow by a Mastiff, which is owned by a doctor out in White Rock. And this dog weighs 230 pounds and plays with 25-pound rocks the way that my dogs play with tennis balls. But that's his play bark. So it sounds like coming from the bowels of hell, doesn't it? Anyway, in dog play, it can get pretty rough. I mean, the same way it is with kids. And so what happens over here is that every now and then, you know, they get excited, they do something which could be interpreted as being aggressive. They will go back into a play bow, you know, to say, oops, this is getting out of hand. Look, it's just fun, you know, okay. So they will sort of begin to back off and that kind of thing. I love this picture. I'm part of the Y to Y project. This wolf found himself discovered by this rather unhappy bison, so he tried to diffuse the situation with a little play bow. It didn't work. Charging is a dominance threat. Remember, I pointed out to you that one of the things which the border collie does is he runs at the animals in order to move them along. This is a dominance charge. This is one which is much stronger because the mouth is open and clearly showing, and this one you just don't want to mess with, okay? In play, the dogs charge. It's part of the game. But they will keep that smile on their face, okay? So you'll get, I mean, I find it difficult to see how they're breathing over there, but they make sure that that tongue is out over the front teeth to indicate that, in fact, even though they're running at you, this is all in play. Dogs will respond to human beings doing this sort of thing. So you can very often get your dogs to do a play bow. With my arthritis and my old age and that sort of thing, if I got down like that, I'd need a crane to pick me up. But you can sometimes get the same effect by just sort of bending down and sort of slapping your forearms against your knees. And my dogs will do a little play bow, and then they'll take a bark and rush off in some direction for me to chase them. Highly unlikely, but... what about tail wagging? You know, well, the first thing is there's a lot of myths about this. A dog who's wagging his tail is not necessarily happy or friendly or approachable, and he's not necessarily non-dominant. He is also not necessarily a dog that will not bite. Tail wagging is communication, and you must understand that. Dogs will wag their tail to anything which they think might be alive. I mean, it could be another dog, it could be a butterfly, it could be a dust bunny, you know, flooding across the floor, okay? And they'll wag their tails at it. But it is communication. So, you know, suppose that I have a hungry dog and I put some bowl of food down in front of him. Well, he's going to wag his tail. That's communication, okay? However, we have the same situation, same food, same hungry dog. And now, however, we're going to remove ourselves, and we're just going to leave a camera there. And the dog might give a little excitement tremor to his tail, but he's not going to wag his tail. Why? Because it's communication. And there's nothing to communicate with. I mean, do you walk into a room and say, hello, walls? I haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you. Ceiling? Yep, still there. You know, no, we don't do that. He'll still eat the food, but you're not going to get those sort of tail wags. Tails measure two aspects of the emotional or social thermometer. The rate of tail wagging measures the excitement. So rapid means that the dogs are aroused and excited, and slow means that they're depressed or lethargic and that sort of thing. Whereas the height of the tail, which we already mentioned before, indicates the dog's dominance status. So a dog with his tail up in the air, wagging like that, is a dog which is basically saying, I'm boss around here, back off, give me space. It drives me bloody crazy. You know, I see a mother, this dog is giving this clear response saying, oh, look, dear, you know, he's a good, friendly dog, go over and pet him. You know, the kid rushes over like this to pet the dog, and the dog makes an air snap in their direction over there. And the woman is astonished, you know. Well, the dog snapped at my child without any warning. What the hell do you think that was? You know, the dog is virtually shouting, you know, back off, give me space. Is there anything equivalent to happy tail wagging? Yeah, it's that sort of tail wagging where the tail is held moderately low and it swings back and forth and seems to drag the hips with it. And the rate is usually moderate to fast and that sort of thing. But it's really a submissive signal. I call it my fearless leader tail wag, okay? Because it basically is a dog who's saying, you are my fearless leader and you will take care of me and you will not hurt me and so on and so forth, okay? Yeah, I mean, the dog is obviously not a threat and he's glad to see you and that sort of thing, but he's also saying, you know, you're boss. There are status issues. You know, dogs have the mental ability of a young child, actually about a human 2-year-old, and the super dogs, the dogs in the top 20%, maybe a human 2.5-year-old. However, they have the social consciousness and concerns of a human teenager. So they're worried about status, who's moving up in the pack, who's sleeping with who, and that sort of thing. For dogs, the signals show up in a number of different ways. Literally, the dog who is on top is the top dog. Okay? So a dominant dog will stand over another dog to indicate that it's, you know, his, that he's in charge here. A much more subtle signal, which you see, is when a dog will come and put its head over the shoulders of another dog. And that, again, is a sign of dominance. And you can also pick it up from other cues over here. I mean, he's obviously got the dominant tail thing. He's considerably lower. A much more subtle version of this is placing a paw. You know, you usually place it on your knee or that sort of thing. And this is a dog trying to display dominance. I mean, a dog comes over and he puts his paw on your knee and you look in those eyes and you say, oh, what a cute dog. And, you know, and the dog's basically saying, I'm boss around here, give me something to eat. And you say, you're so cute, and you give him something to eat. And he figures, yep, I would know. You know, I just won this. Sometimes you'll get two dogs and they're both trying to show this dominance and it turns into these rearing matches. It's really, I mean, very often there's no growling or anything, but it does look like, you know, WWF wrestling as each of them tries to get on top. But this rearing behavior is one of the reasons why some people actually make problems for their dogs. If people are not very secure about their dog, they see another dog coming, they tug on the leash to bring the dog close to them. But that does what? That raises the dog's front legs. So that other dog who's just sort of walking along, what the hell are you doing? Why are you doing this dominance challenge, right? And so what will tend to happen under those circumstances is the other dog might in fact respond, sometimes aggressively. Dogs, however, do not seem to care about, you know, young two-footed creatures who tend to jump on top of them and that sort of thing. They seem to be really quite tolerant of our kids and that sort of thing, and they don't read those as being dominance displays. I had this woman who was very concerned that her dog was homosexual because he was mounting male dogs and that sort of, and that has nothing to do with sex, okay? A dog will mount another dog, females will mount other animals just to express social dominance. So dogs mount just about anything they want to express dominance to. And so what is this dog saying? It's the same thing as the paw on you, kind of a thing. A lot of behaviors which we engage in where we allow the dogs basically to sleep on top of us or that sort of thing are actually sending the wrong message to the dog because it's basically saying that we're accepting their dominance. It's very important for dogs to be able to calm things down because they're pack animals, and if there's any conflict, animals can be hurt, and this reduces the efficiency of the pack. So there are a lot of signals which are used by dogs to sort of bring the challenge level down. And we usually refer to these as calming signals. So part of it is, you can anticipate some of them. I mean, if a direct stare is a threat, so you don't stare, you look away. So these two dogs, I mean, they're seriously trying not to make eye contact and this sort of thing, in these sorts of things. These are early in obedience classes. I mean, dogs do this a lot. In some cases, the dog actually closes eyes, and sometimes you'll get that body curl, so that you get that sort of submissive body curl with closed, slitted eyes as he tries to look away. A variation of that submissive lick is also the sort of nose lick, so that the dog is basically saying, I'm not a threat. And you tend to get that quite a bit, again, in puppies more often than others. Yawning, remember, was a sign of stress, so you can sometimes use that to say to a dog that you are not a threat. Blah, blah, blah. So that's what this dog is doing. We instruct people that sometimes it's useful to just yawn. If the dog seems to be challenging, they will take that as a submissive gesture. We also use the sit a lot, because a dog who is sitting is not a threat, but he's also not afraid. He's not lowering himself. So most dogs will, you can get your dog, if your dog is reasonably stable, to sit even when he's being threatened by another dog, because he'll accept that. You're not saying that I'm some sort of wimp, I'll just sit over here. And the other dogs will take that as non-threatening and but also non-fearful, so they tend to leave him alone. Very often what you find is that adult dogs, when they approach puppies, if the puppies respond at all fearfully, they will immediately sit. They stop their approach, they just sit, and they allow the puppy to then come and approach them. And this is basically saying, look, I'm not a threat. It's all, it's all okay, kind of thing. There's something else. This is not like a human sort of a thing, but in the face of threat, sometimes dogs do things which look absolutely bizarre. This dog is running toward you over there, showing a dishonest thing, and the other dog, the dog who's being challenged, suddenly stops and starts sniffing at the ground or pawing at the ground, and that sort of thing. So you can see, I mean, you begin to wonder what's going on over here. These guys are approaching with great threat, and this guy is, oh yeah, well, look, there's something interesting over here. And that sort of lack of concern is also a lack of threat.